Are we still on the forever wait? I do like that term. The forever wait. It has nothing to do with the Purge movies, Dani Sureck, so don't even over there, okay? It's actually props to Darren Urban, who coined the forever wait. Calvisi Consulting, the Pauly Pigskin Division, does have one micro suggestion, though.
What's that?
To evolve the concept here on Cardinals Underground, presented by Pacific Office Automation. What about the addition of a countdown clock? Of course, I'm ripping that off Super Bowl Sunday and many other mega events, right? But it's a mega event when you throw the countdown clock up there. And in real time, can't you make that happen technically on azcardinals.com since technically he is in charge of the website, is he not, Dan?
Darren's in charge of I'm not going to finish that because I know that's going to get pulled for the open. So I'm going to stop myself saying that line. Yes, Darren is in charge of azcardinals.com. I said that fast enough to where they can't clip it of Darren is.
I could do that if you felt strongly about it. I'm sorry. Once you mentioned the Purge, I kept waiting for the cool Paul Calvisi going down all the Purge names.
Well, I don't have those at my disposal. I mean, just off the top of my head, there's the Purge Anarchy, the First Purge, the Forever Purge, and the Purge election year. And
that's going to be our new sponsor.
I do. I hope so. I could do the. I don't want to purge any kind of countdown clock. I mean, we could have that. It seems like we're getting closer to that, doesn't it?
Well, Kyler Murray, wait for it, has been activated. So it's not just lip service, right? Not just an announcement, not just telling the media maybe what they want to hear or what the opposition needs to hear. He has been activated. So that can only mean one thing, right, Dani Sureck? Come on now.
Kyler Murray's going to play Sunday.
Yep.
Barring a setback, which, knock on wood, none of us are expecting at practice. Kyler Murray's back.
That was metal. You knocked on metal.
Oh, I thought it was. I thought this table was like
wood
on the outside.
On the box here.
No, I thought this was like
Formica, maybe. I don't know.
So look, the schedule reads that the season opener was September 10th, but we'd like to disagree. The real season opener, November 12th against Atlanta. You're hitting the big red reset button in a lot of different ways. This isn't really the Arizona Cardinals until you get your franchise quarterback to your QB1, K1 under center.
I would agree with that. I think this is the tale of two seasons. Well, one season. The tale of two halves of one season. I don't know. I'm going to have to workshop that.
I never thought sitting at a round table on a podcast with Darren Urban that I would come off as the pessimist, but I will do my best here.
Oh, I'll give you a run for your money.
I agree that this is the turn of a page. Because the play you're going to get from Kyler Murray is different than the play you are getting from Josh Dobbs or Clayton Tune. No knock to the two of those, just saying the type of quarterback and type of player that Kyler Murray is. I don't want to take that away. Absolutely, his return will elevate this offense and in turn, I think, elevate this team. I don't want to have this expectation that Kyler Murray is putting on his Superman cape and he's coming in to save the day in the final 8 games. The Cardinals are going to possibly win 6 or 7 of them when you're looking at their opponents. That's just not realistic in my mind that Kyler's going to come in and he's going to fix all the problems. Coming off this Browns game in Cleveland specifically, yes, it was difficult when you have a rookie quarterback getting his first start. It was so much more than that when you look at the struggles of the offense. So while Kyler Murray is going to elevate, I don't want people to have this expectation, in my opinion, that he's going to come in and suddenly this is going to be a completely different offense.
I'm not disagreeing with
Darren?
you. You're a fine pessimist.
Thank you.
Don't tell Craig Grelu. It'll mess up that whole thing of the three of us he's got. And I'm not sitting here thinking, even Jonathan Gannon said Monday when he was talking about Kyler Murray potentially starting Sunday.
He's starting Sunday. Come
on.
Barring a setback.
Barring a setback. He did say that, hey, we shouldn't get over our skis. He didn't say that, but he's not sure that we're going to see the Kyler Murray we're always used to seeing just because it's been a while since Kyler Murray has played football. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. So I'm in agreement with Dani on this one single issue.
I'm glad that was caught on camera.
But Deshaun Watson put some ugly football out there, and he still got to win. The talent eventually took over. There's Kyler watching Deshaun Watson, and I'm standing behind Kyler on the sideline, and I'm thinking, what's Kyler thinking?
Could you see over him?
Don't take that, Paul.
once again, you know what? Where is my list? I'm writing that down right here. Darren Urban, right behind the name Dave Pash.
He's making a list right around holiday time.
Stenata Watch List, National Association of Diminutive Americans. Dave Pash for comments detrimental against Tutu Atwell and Greg Dortch. Now Darren Urban accordingly right there. Okay. So if you're watching Deshaun Watson, you're saying, oh, wait a minute. A lot of ugly football out there. But when it came time to make game-winning plays, game-changing plays, Deshaun Watson did that. An elite, highly paid quarterback, obviously, Deshaun Watson. You ask any player in any locker room, Deshaun Watson, what's his number? 230.
See, that's
what they say. His number is 230. Deshaun Watson's not number 4. His number is 230. That's how much guaranteed money he has in his contract. That's what Deshaun Watson is known for. And there he was. I mean, he couldn't complete a 5-yard out. I mean, some of his checkdowns hit the turf, but he had the 49-yarder and the 59-yard strike to Amari Cooper. Those changed the game in so many different ways, and eventually, once again, the talent won out. So for Kyler, is he going to be rusty? Absolutely. Not rusty maybe. I mean, Deshaun Watson at least had camp, but he hadn't played in 5 weeks, save 12 snaps. And so I just think that, and then there's this aspect of it. What does having a franchise legit QB1 do for the rest of the team? How does it elevate everyone else? Because you go into that battle on Sunday knowing you have that chance to win when you have your guy playing quarterback.
Absolutely. When you have a franchise quarterback, part of their role is to elevate the players around them. I think that's going to be up to Kyler Murray, and that's something he's going to have to do. That's not something we saw last year. We talked about it on this podcast that we didn't feel he was doing that. Now, times change. We have heard from his teammates and his coaches how diligent Kyler has been watching film and in the meeting rooms, understanding this new offense. We have seen a different side of Kyler in terms of not just like physically seeing him around more and rehabbing and being here in the offseason, but just seems like he's involved more, like he really is stepping in to that leadership role. The good news is him coming onto the field now in the middle of the season, he has chemistry with majority of his receivers. He's thrown to Hollywood Brown plenty of times. He has experience with Trey McBride, with James Conner out of the backfield, with Zach Ertz, with Rondale Moore. So if you're looking at your key receivers, it's really just Michael Wilson that he hasn't had a ton of experience with, which is good. But there's still aspects of this offense that he's going to have to pick up, and it's also going to be his job to make sure he is putting his teammates in the right position and that the accurate deep ball that we had seen the last couple of years that had fallen off last year is back.
For me, like I don't want to say I don't care, but I don't care about like what receivers he's throwing to. For me, this whole thing is about Kyler and himself. For me, when he goes back on the field, how comfortable is he as a football player, knowing the last time he was out there with other opponent football players, his knee blow up. Now, that said, it was a weird thing. It was like it was non-contact. It wasn't even getting hit. But see, to me, that's all of it right now. I'm not really worried about the rest of it. Even being in a new offense, I'm not even that worried about that. I'm worried about where his head is in terms of running around on a football field with guys trying to tackle you when you're coming off this injury.
Do you think it's more or less mentally challenging because it was a non-contact injury? If you had been piled up on and twisted every which way and suffered a leg injury that way because you had 4 300-pounders twisting you like a pretzel, is that different than all of a sudden out of nowhere for the first time in your career you planted and suffered a season-ending knee injury?
I say this as someone who has not suffered a torn ACL, knock on wood, twice again, and doesn't play football for a living. I would think if you're going to get tackled more times in a game, possibly, maybe not as a quarterback, I would think that it would be difficult mentally if this had happened under a pile when he was getting tackled, because he is a quarterback that likes to escape and run. And I would imagine that it would be difficult mentally if every play you have these 200, 300-pound guys coming at you, and all of a sudden now you're meant to like, oh shoot, I can't let them touch me because of my knee, which I know sounds he doesn't want to. This makes sense in my head, and I don't think I'm doing a good job. I think It is so much less likely, even though it did happen, for the type of injury that Kyler sustained to happen the way it did, that even though that would still be difficult mentally, I would think if you were getting tackled and you were getting sacked and that's how he tore his ACL, I think that would be really difficult every single play trying to avoid that.
I still think there's got to be a part of him, though, even though it was non-contact, that you know it's happened once. And if it's happening when you're not getting tackled, how much do you get worried that how much do the odds go up that it'll happen when you do get tackled?
I heard an athlete, I forget which NFL player is coming back from a knee injury recently, say, you can go through the cones and the drills all you want because you know where you're going. It's a predetermined drill. You're going to go down there to the 10, you're going to cut left. But in a game, you don't know which way you're going to have to move instantaneously based on the defender, or if you're playing defense based on which way you're going to have to tackle a guy as he's trying to. So it's a totally different set of circumstances and maybe level of confidence you have to have in your rehab. We'll see. I mean, what are we guaranteed to see from Kyler Murray in his debut? I think you'll see the vision, you'll see the arm talent. I don't know to what degree we'll see the mobility. Is he going to be more like, to use a totally different skill set comparison, but the same mindset? Remember Peyton Manning at the end of his career? If anyone got within 5 yards of him, he just threw the ball into the turf. He's like, I'm not even risking it. Is that Kyler Murray in this case?
I wouldn't be surprised if you see Kyler scramble on a few plays. I don't know that you'll see a lot of designed run plays right off the top, not even just this week, but I think a couple weeks.
And you know what? Hit pause right there, because in Kyler's career, he's not been a fan of the design run. That's a big difference between him and a Josh Dobbs, for example, is that when Kyler runs the ball, he's always been more a fan of it's organic. Defense has their back to me, I'm gone. Or I get flushed out of the pocket, guess what? I see a lane to the sticks and getting out of bounds. He's never really been that big a fan of, hey, let's go quarterback power right to the pylon.
Right. I also think it will be interesting to see, and I don't think this is something we'll necessarily see in the first game since Kyler's only had 3 weeks of practice. I think over time it will be interesting if this coaching staff, if it's something that they want to change or they want to let Kyler do his thing. The biggest difference to me when watching Dobbs scramble was he would hang in the pocket and he would run through the gap forward, where Kyler has a tendency to roll out and take the ball back an extra 5 or 10 yards, which then could lead to a 15, 20-yard sack otherwise. That's something that I think when you're talking about Kyler running, which I know I'm kind of not really answering your question, but I do think that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on for the future of, does the way Kyler runs, does the way he not even runs scramble, is that something that this staff is going to try to adjust?
And maybe the first thing we'll notice, forget the running, is how long he hangs in the pocket. Is he willing to climb the pocket? How is he with guys at his feet? How is he when that pocket is collapsing from the inside out? Where is he? Is he still going to hang in and try and get to his second or third read, go through his progressions? These are all things we're going to find out. These are things you can't replicate in practice. That's what Garrett Williams told us in the Big Red Rage. At some point, you're only going to get so much out of practice. All right? The Allen Iverson. You're only going to get so much. There's a ceiling on practice and what it can do for you, and obviously nobody is ever touching the quarterback in practice.
I will say I'm very excited for this accuracy from Kyler Murray, because I think when you think about this season and a handful of plays, not guaranteed that Kyler would have made them. However, he would have had a good chance of how many times was Hollywood Brown open and he was overthrown or he was thrown out of bounds, or the interceptions that were behind tight ends of Zach Ertz or Trey McBride, or interceptions thrown in the end zone. I think that's a big area that is really going to boost this offense, is the accuracy, how quick Kyler can get the ball out, and the zip he throws it with, and how that's going to benefit his receivers.
There are just so many things that he brings to the table. It's funny, we talk about what he might not be able to do when he comes back, and with all due respect to Clayton Tune, we saw what Clayton Tune couldn't do last week, and I know there's a lot that goes into that, but ultimately, I do think Kyler ratchets up that position significantly just by being on the field.
What if the pass protection, though, is the level of what it was for Clayton Tune? especially considering you might still be dealing with some significant offensive line injuries.
Oh, yeah.
By the time you get
Probably
to Sunday.
will.
So Clayton Tune was sacked 7 times, hit 10 times. So what does that mean? I mean, in other words, to what degree did you really get a fair evaluation of a Clayton Tune? He was under duress so quickly, often.
Although it was funny, I looked it up. On his 32 dropbacks, he was pressured only 17 times. It seemed like it was way more.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's what... Now, he was not good those 17 times.
Right. And only the coaches know how much quicker should the ball have come out to absolve his offensive line. And then even times where the ball did come out, he airmailed a receiver for an interception. And then the second interception was, that was right in front of us on the sideline. And you saw 44 the whole way, like, no, no, no. And then, everyone was screaming from the sideline, and that ball got loose, and it was a ball that never should have been thrown. Let's just zoom out. Talking about rookie quarterbacks, and you can apply this to any quarterback, really. Look at what C.J. Stroud is doing right now for Houston. And look at what Bryce Young is not doing for Carolina. I looked it up. Bryce Young has been sacked 29 times and hit 63 times. They have arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL, Carolina. So, to what degree does that go in the equation when you're trying to judge a Bryce Young?
Kurt Warner tweeted about it the other day, and that was his exact point. His
Okay.
exact point was, I get what everybody's trying to say about C.J. Stroud, but it is not. C.J. Stroud's offensive line is light years better than the Panthers, and that makes a difference.
Now, that's not to take anything away from C.J. Stroud. When you throw for 5 touchdowns in a game and a rookie record, 470 passing yards, and you lead a game-winning drive.
Did he not get the record that the Cardinals have Houston's first overall pick, and he's not doing us any favors?
Yeah, no,
Should we remind him when we go to Houston in a few weeks?
What's the opposite of a thank you note? Because that's what C.J. Stroud deserves at this point from the Red Sea. You're right, no doubt. But once again, for Clayton Tune, and he looked every bit the part of a 5th-round rookie, and you never know what you're going to get. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the pick right after him, looked very similar to that in Week 4 when he started. But Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders, a 4th-round pick, fared pretty well. So, okay. All that is moot, and that is secondary to the fact that Kyler Murray is playing on Sunday, barring a setback, everybody now. Wolf asked me on his radio show on Monday, what are you most curious to see? The number one thing I said, Kyler in this offense. What does it look like? As a refresher for everyone, Josh Dobbs in the first 6 games of the Cardinals season was under center more snaps than Kyler Murray has been his entire NFL career. Does it look the same? Is he under center to the same degree? Do you know the key word for Jonathan Gannon? Adapt. Does it look radically different in terms of being under center versus being in the shotgun, especially his first game back from a major knee injury?
I think that is also something that we will see a progression of as the weeks go on. I wouldn't be surprised if this first game back, Kyler is in the shotgun more just because that's what he's done more in his career. I did think it was interesting when offensive coordinator Drew Petzing talked to the media Tuesday, and it was asked about Kyler being under center, if that was going to be an adjustment and how confident Petzing was in that. And his answer was interesting to me because he said it's being under center isn't a limitation for Kyler. It's just something he hasn't really had to do. It's not like having him under center is a liability. He just hasn't played in any scheme that's really required him to do that, which I thought was an interesting way to think about it.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I also think there's a difference between feeling like he can do it and whether he's comfortable or wants to do it. I think there's a difference there.
Here's the big question. And see, I was on Red Sea Report earlier today, and I was coaching up Craig Grialou and especially Kyle Vandenbosch on the game of football.
Okay, wait a minute. Can we get that cut that for Craig that Paul was coaching up Craig Grialou?
And especially KVB. Include that as well.
I'm not going there.
Going into the Cleveland game, the Arizona Cardinals offense was number 4 in rushing yards per game, 138. Number 2 in yards per carry, 5.1. Number 1 in 20-plus yard runs, 13 explosive runs for the Arizona Cardinals. What does that do for Kyler Murray? Dare I say, the only time in Kyler's career where he truly had a balanced offense, an offense with a top 10 running game, was the first half of 2021 when the Cardinals started 7-0, 10-2. They ran the ball with as much ability as they did throwing the ball. They had the 200-plus yard rushing game at the LA Rams when they jack-stomped in Week 4. They ran for over 200 at Cleveland in that big win. So what's most intriguing to me, beyond just what Kyler looks like in his own skill set, how much rust, etc., is what does he look like in this offense? And what does that do for Kyler? We talk so much about what Kyler does for the Cardinals, but what can a balanced offense that might just feature James Conner, who was top 5 in rushing when he got injured and was tied for the NFL lead in explosive runs, what does that mean for Kyler and his performance against Atlanta and then the rest of the season?
I think that's a really good point of how Kyler can really benefit from this type of scheme. That was one of the unfortunate parts is, well, James Conner's now missed the minimum 4 games after being placed on IR with a knee injury. You didn't have Amari DiMercato this week, who was dealing with a toe. And the drop-off of not having those two was significant. And I'm not quite sure if that's mostly on Keontae Ingram, who has struggled to get positive yardage this year. Is that more of the blocking? Is that the situations that he's being put in games? But when you didn't have Conner and you didn't have DiMercato, it was very clear that the Cardinals were not going to be able to be a balanced team.
What if your offensive line, starting O-line, left to right, because we haven't even hit practice so far yet this week. We have no idea. But what if you start this game the way you finished last game, and your offensive line left to right is Kelvin Beachum, Dennis Daly, a third stringer, Yelda Froholt at center, Carter O'Donnell, who made his regular season NFL debut last week at right guard, and then the rookie Paris Johnson Jr. I got 2 words for you: max protect. And the Cardinals actually did run max protect at the very end of that game, and you had an 11-yard completion from Clayton Tune to Hollywood Brown. It was one of his better throws towards the end of that game. And I'll be honest with you, I wondered to myself, should that have been an adjustment earlier in the game, max protect? Because Hollywood Brown is beating everyone and everything that defenses are throwing at him. I don't care if you put 2 receivers out there and you block 7, Hollywood's winning his matchup.
That's a fair point. And you know that with Kyler Murray at quarterback, Hollywood Brown is going to get eyeballs on him down the field.
And they have instant chemistry.
Yeah.
So
I like that idea. Paul Calvisi, new assistant coach.
Big consideration as to, and then
Calvisi coaching. Has that been used yet ever?
It probably should have been, but no, we're not laying claim to that one.
You did say you were coaching up Craig and KVD.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, my hands are
Or does that fall under the Calvisi consulting umbrella?
There's only so many hours in the day. By the time I'm done coaching up Craig Grialou, I mean, come on now, I'm exhausted at that point. Let's be honest. So, but the question becomes too is, what does that mean for Kyler's confidence? It's a lot different if Kyler's in the huddle and he's got his franchise left tackle DJ Humphries there. I'll tell you a quick funny story from week 2 last year at the Raiders. DJ Humphries went out for 1 play in that game. He got banged up, and he had to come out because he got medical attention on the field. He comes to the sideline. I don't know if he just lost his wind, whatever. It was apparent he was okay, and he was instantly ready to go back in. I found out later that Chandler Jones was yelling at Kyler, "You better hope he comes back!" because Chandler was getting stymied by DJ the entire game. And apparently someone was talking something to Chandler Jones like, "You ain't getting to the quarterback, are you? Are you, Chan?" And he was getting really frustrated. And then and DJ was, I mean, he's always the dog on game day, but he's like, "Get off me, I'm going back in." He didn't want anyone talking to him from the training staff. I'm going back in. So there's got to be a level of confidence in Kyler Murray and having DJ Humphries, your franchise left tackle, out there, right?
Yes, I would think so. Although I would think I would hope there'd be some confidence too with Beach. Although obviously True. Beach and Kyler.
You're right. What was the nickname last year? Beach and the Backups. It was like a 50s band, 50s cover
Beach
band.
Was the last man standing.
He was. Yes.
It's going to be. I mean, the offense. I asked Jonathan Gannon Monday if the offensive line injuries could impact whether Kyler would start Sunday. He said no. So
that doesn't fall under the umbrella of setback. A shuffled offensive line. No, it would be something else. Okay. All right. Just curious about that.
I am curious when we get our first look at practice during the open portion on Wednesday.
Your favorite part of the week?
Why do you have to say it like that?
I don't know. I'm just saying it. I know you love it.
What? I don't know what you're implying. I love being outside and watching practice, some fresh air. Anywho, what point was I making? Oh.
Does the fresh air help or hinder your sneezing?
It helps because it's dry. What is with the two of you? I'm
No.
sorry that I got allergies
No.
when we were back in the Midwest and fall in Cleveland and I was sneezing,
No,
Paul.
I was impressed. You actually kept count on Saturday. How many sneezes
because it got
was it?
so ridiculous. It was 16. And I
Okay.
could have Sam Huff in our video department, who is my roommate on the road, vouch for that because at one point I looked at her and I said, you don't have to keep saying bless you. And she said, thank you.
Not Sam Huff, the former Giants linebacker. That's right. Just to make
Which
sure.
we actually saw at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. She
Oh,
took his
there you
picture
go.
with the bus.
All right.
That's nice.
What
Nice.
point was I?
No.
Back to my point.
It's
When
not
we,
a-
when
it's
we
not
get
a-
a chance to go out there to watch practice,
Thank you. I'm curious to
Okay.
see how different it looks from what we have seen from Kyler, with the exception of him now throwing to Hollywood Brown and Michael Wilson if he's out there. Because what, Darren?
no, I finish.
That's my point. That's my point. Golly, what a day.
Wow. I was just going to say, I'm hoping he trolls us and throws to all the practice squad receivers again during the open part.
That would
That's
be good.
possible.
Yeah, that would be good. There's, well, I mean, hey, hopefully he doesn't speak that into existence. What is the status of a Michael Wilson? We don't know. We'll see about that.
Well, they did release Daniel Ayers from the practice squad when they activated Kyler.
Okay.
So
All right.
I would assume that would mean one less body you need at practice for wide receiver, which would seem to bode well for Michael Wilson.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Drew Petzing was asked, what do you want to see out of Kyler Murray? And he said the big thing was just everything's clean from an operation standpoint in the offense, right? And then the decision-making, how you get in and out of the huddle, all that kind of stuff, and, the communication. So it's amazing. The first 5 things he listed really had nothing to do with football, at least after the snap. Everything was pre-snap pretty much that he listed. I guess decision-making would be once the ball's in play. But there are a lot of other things. Now, he has 4 years of experience. He's been to 2 Pro Bowls. He's played in a postseason game. But there is going to be some of that rust we would expect. On the other hand, Kyler comes in with supreme confidence. When he was activated off the practice list, Michael Wilson told us at the end of an interview that Kyler had come up to the receivers as a group and said, as soon as I'm fully healthy, I'm going to beat most of you in the 40. So he always has confidence, Kyler Murray. And so, we'll see what that translates into, and against an Atlanta defense that features Calais Campbell, by the way, who gobbled up Josh Dobbs for a safety in the last game as they lost the Pastronaut at the very end. Calais has 3 sacks in his last 5 games, by the way, but they did put Grady Jarrett on IR just last week, was one of their big defensive linemen. So
How about Josh Dobbs doing what he did for
That's
Minnesota?
exciting. It's great for him.
I agree.
I did think it was interesting that NASA, and unless I'm forgetting NASA and all these other people are tweeting about that history, and I'm like, where was all this tension when Josh Dobbs led the Cardinals to a win over the Cowboys? But
yeah,
anywho,
the
neither here nor there.
The Pastronaut nickname is about 2 months old here in the AZ.
Well,
I think longer. I think he's been using that nickname actually
Yeah,
for quite
I think
some time with himself.
Yeah, that predated us.
Which again, that was also a tweet that that's a new nickname, which clearly haven't been following the
Come on,
Cardinals.
Adam
a certain
Schefter, you know
someone.
better than
You're
that.
going to name drop. I wasn't going to.
So Adams, oh my goodness, Atlanta's defense has given up 1 rushing touchdown in the last 6 games. Josh Dobbs, 18-yard scamper. So there you go. That was entertaining stuff, no doubt about it. What else about this game and going into? I mean, look, that Cleveland game. Anybody want to have a comment? I mean, first off, Kyler's timing couldn't be better based on how historically poor the offensive showing was, right? I mean, the fact you get to wipe the slate clean and nobody's looking back, thankfully, at that offensive performance in Cleveland. Everyone's looking ahead now to Atlanta. So in terms of timing, it's already a win.
I don't even know how to describe what we saw offensively. 9 punts, 2 turnovers, a turnover on downs. There was nothing. I mean, it's one thing that, yes, Arizona was going up against the number 1 defense in Cleveland almost across the board in terms of where they lead the league. But they weren't even giving themselves a chance to compete offensively. And the defense, once again, I don't know if I would say they did enough to win, but I do think that the defense did a good job handling the situations they were put in, which was no break because the offense couldn't get a first down. You were putting the Browns in short field position. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And there was a funky play, that touchdown to Amari Cooper, that the pass bounced off Dante Still's face mask and traveled 20 yards, happened to land perfectly in Cooper's hands in the end zone, even though Jalen Thompson was right there. Just felt like things were not going the Cardinals' way.
Yeah, time of possession was 36.5 to 23.5. So the defense was definitely out there a long time. It reminded me a lot of the 2014 playoff loss at Carolina with Ryan Lindley.
Oh, yeah.
Where you go back, they had 78 total yards in that playoff loss against Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis.
I was there, baby.
Yeah. And it reminded me, it's just like, okay, you just realized that the quarterback, Ryan Lindley then, Clayton Tune now.
Great guy, Ryan Lindley.
Great guy. Both a great guy, but they were overmatched. The moment
the
defense was just too much for him at that time. And especially when Clayton Tune was just getting lit up from the get-go and defenders were all over him.
It's funny you bring that playoff game up because one of the running backs the Cardinals were using at that point was Marion Grice because of injuries.
Yeah.
Just like the Cardinals were down to their top couple of running backs.
Yeah.
I will say, since Arthur Smith shaved his mustache at 3:45 in the morning to try and turn things around for the Falcons, would the same mantra work if Paul grew out his mustache again for the Cardinals?
Okay.
His offseason.
One, would he have to do it in the middle of the morning or in the dead of night?
I don't know how fast facial hair grows.
And more importantly,
I'm the same age as Arthur Smith. I do wake up every night about 3:45, so it's possible. It's plausible. Yeah.
Why did he do it at 3:45?
I don't know. Maybe he didn't go to sleep or he woke up early. I don't know why he was up at 3:45.
He couldn't go back to sleep, he said, and he decided at that moment that change was needed, both with his team and personally, and so he shaved the mustache. Although he did also say at the press conference towards the end, apparently he said, "I'm already regretting it," is what he said.
Well,
I think that means you should bring back your mustache. Do your part, Paul.
Well, he's already been replaced on the mustache power poll. Right now, it's Travis Kelce, begrudgingly. It's Aaron Rodgers.
Begrudgingly?
Well, Travis Kelce doesn't need any more spotlight, Danny. And then you have Aaron Rodgers, number 2. And number 3 in fast charging is Aiden O'Connell, the rookie quarterback for the Raiders. Have you seen his glorious mustache?
I think I have.
I mean, it's straight out of law enforcement. It's really
I got to
good.
be honest. There was a picture from the combine. I need to find it somewhere where it was
Straight out of law.
O'Connell. It was
It really
C.J.
is.
Stroud, Bryce Young. Who was the other? Was there another high pick quarterback this year?
Good question. Oh, well, Anthony Richardson.
It was Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Aiden O'Connell, who I believe had the mustache, and he didn't quite look quite as built as them. And I'm like, who is that guy, and why is he in the same picture as the other 3?
Yeah, do yourself a favor. Do not stand next to Anthony Richardson. You don't want to do that. That's not in your best interest. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, Arthur Smith, he's got a team that's had 5 straight losing seasons, their last playoff year, 2017. But they're much like the Ravens and the Browns in the following category. They have rushed for 100 yards plus in 7 to 9 games this year. And in the last 2 years, they're second only to Baltimore in the number of 100-yard rushing games. They are rush first, second, and third. And if you guys remember, late last season, week 17 out of 18 last year, we were at Atlanta. Tyler Algier, this is why I don't understand why they drafted Bijan Robinson, who now has fewer carries than Tyler Algier, who was the 5th-round rookie out of BYU last year, but a former Mike linebacker. Dude ran the ball with a vengeance. And in a lost season at the end of last year, there were a lot of business decisions being made. Nobody wanted a piece of that Algier
Didn't he
kid.
run pretty well against the Cardinals at the end of the year?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He didn't want any. Nobody wanted a part of tackling that guy, and he's actually taken over more of the role and the load because Bijan Robinson has been held to under 65 yards rushing 5 games in a row.
He's been held under 65 yards, or they're
Bijan
not giving him
Robinson.
the touches to get more than 65 yards?
A little bit of both recently. So, but they haven't gotten a lot out of Kyle Pitts, obviously, the number 4 pick,
So
2021.
interesting.
Drake London, a top 10 pick last year. So, and then Bijan Robinson, they haven't got a lot out of these guys in terms of opening up the offense.
And now you're changing your quarterback.
Yeah, and now it's Taylor Heineke. Now, here's your pro tip on Taylor Heineke. Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls very familiar with him from their days in the division. So they've game planned against him at least twice and they know what he's all about. He does have this very unique ability to extend plays. He's a gamer. He's a baller. He's going to figure out these crazy ways to get it done. He's kind of, hair on fire, sort of like an old Brett Favre type. He's just going to gunsling that thing around the yard. So we'll see. Honestly, I would have much rather seen Desmond Ridder, the inexperienced Desmond Ridder, who is struggling. You got Taylor Heineke, who has a couple dozen starts under his belt over the last couple of years. So experience at least.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if redemption game for the Cardinals defense, but you definitely have the opportunity to take advantage of an offense that doesn't really seem like they're cohesive. It seems like you have a couple of pieces, but you can't quite put it together to make the puzzle work.
So we'll see about the Cardinals in that one. Once again, Kyler Murray, I just think, is the rising tide that lifts all boats, especially coming off that deflating loss in Cleveland. I would expect, and look, this isn't some big proclamation because we had this discussion earlier. If there's one constant with this team this year, it's been the urgency, the effort, and the intensity, right? Think of the last couple of years before a coaching change was made and a change in GM. How many times did we come out on a Monday and say, yeah, guess what? They were DOA in Detroit. Didn't have it. Remember that road loss?
I remember. Yep. I remember you were banging the drum hard on all of those, all the time.
Wow, I might have made a quip that I was ready to run an extra long set of jumper cables from the team bus all the way to the sideline and hook it up to the metal bench.
I believe I somewhat remember that.
That was one joke I made, but by the time they got to the Carolina home loss against P.J. Walker, where they had no energy in that one.
Playoff game in L.A.?
Playoff game in L.A.?
Once this team fell behind, even if it wasn't by a lot, you could tell mentally on the field and on the sideline that they did not have that belief in the team as a whole to come back. That's different now.
It was September, and Kyle Vandenbosch made a very astute observation. He said the last couple of years you would turn on the film, and there were 10 players and then Budda Baker. No one played with the intensity of Budda Baker. He stood out and above everyone else. Now, is Budda Baker still the best player on defense, pound for pound? Absolutely. But the disparity in effort and intensity is no longer there. It's just, it is the third rail with Jonathan Gannon. Thou shalt at least bring the effort and that intensity, or guess what? I think a number of the players, I'm not going to name names, but there are a number of players who are no longer part of this roster who fell into that category. You couldn't count on them for consistent effort all the time and buy-in. And guess what? This coaching staff is not interested in that sort of player. They're looking for dudes who are deadly serious about the game of football.
That's fair.
And so that at least hasn't been a question yet. And after a deflating game like that in the past, it would have been, right? Especially for the defense. If the defense can't believe in the offense's ability to generate some points and at least give them a chance to get a cup of Gatorade instead of just a constant stream of 3-and-outs, then that's when you run the risk of things bottoming out.
I think, too, there have been situations this season around the league where a player on defense for their team has more or less made that exact comment, Paul, about we have to do more because our offense can't do anything. And you didn't hear that from the defense.
You also heard opponents when they've looked at the Cardinals game film, like Matthew Stafford saying they really play hard. The 49ers, when watching the Cardinals game film going into that Week 4 matchup, wow, this they fly around. You could tell, like, it looks different to the opponents than what they've been accustomed to. So,
and I don't think there's any question about that. And again, when we circle all the way back to Kyler coming back and where this team is, like I said, I agree with Dani. Dani is 100% a
finish the sentence. Darren.
Pessimistic person.
I thought you were going to say right.
But while I don't know if everything changes wins and losses every week, I think if you add in the effort that you've been seeing with Kyler Murray back on the field, that's probably a pretty good combination.
Like Jonathan Ledbetter said to the media, he told the team, are we hanging or banging? I'm not sure how he explained that exactly. I took it to me because he said the same thing in our post-game radio interview. I took it as, are we hanging like hanging our heads and feeling sorry for ourselves, or are we banging, going down swinging?
Yeah,
is that the obvious translation of that?
That's basically what he said.
Okay, just want to make sure I was up on the lingo.
We're gonna have you start saying that at the outset of every podcast.
Darren, you've had enough time. Where is the countdown clock? You have your laptop there. You've been banging away. Have you been programming a countdown clock into azcardinals.com?
I have not. However, I do want to bring up, because I may have said something somewhat derogatory towards your NADA-ish.
National Association of Diminutive Americans, NADA.
I was conquered pretty handily by one Dani Sureck in Papa Shot basketball over the weekend.
I forgot about that. Good reminder, Darren.
Wow, that must have hurt. I mean, Darren prides himself.
And I did it with
crushed me.
these nails.
I mean, Darren is a hoopaholic, okay? So that must have hurt. That must have hit pretty close to home.
I found out
Darren.
Dani was a baller. She played in school.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So it was Friday night in Cleveland, and a bunch of us walked into this dive bar, and Darren was there. And it had a few...
The bar was literally called the dive bar.
I see.
Yeah.
Great music selection.
See, Darren has that pre-programmed into his app. Google Maps takes him directly to anything named the dive bar.
They had a bunch of arcade games. They had skee ball and stuff, and they had Papa Shot. And so I had done one round before, and I had done okay. So I look at Darren, and I said, "You want to go?" He said, "Sure." So I go first. And I think I had...
Oh, you crushed it.
like 76.
You had 50
And
something. The time we
'cause
went,
yeah.
you got 59. I had 34.
That's what it was, difference of 20. So you have 40 seconds. And I remember I finished the round.
Winning isn't enough. She's now rubbing it in.
Oh, I know.
And I look
knew she would.
I look at our producer who was standing with us. I go, "Oh, I'm going to wipe the floor with him." And then Darren goes,
Oh, jeez.
and it wasn't even close.
Wow. Okay.
It wasn't.
Okay. All right. That's good.
I'll be better prepared next time.
I think it's maybe just because like I'm lowered to as the balls are rolling back, right? Like on my arms, I'm not having to reach to grab the basketballs and shoot them. I'm just trying to help you out here.
I did not have the proper violence or intensity going into that, and I will next time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think this is the point of the podcast where we cue that song by Europe that was in the Geico commercial, right? The final countdown, right? I think, isn't this where we cue the final countdown at some point here? Because I just Googled it up. I wanted to make sure it was Europe.
Yes, it's Europe.
I didn't realize the lead singer's named Joey Tempest. I had no
Yes.
idea. That's a solid lead singer name.
I'm sorry, this is random. What is the date of the game Sunday? Is it the 12th?
Yes, it is.
So that'll be exactly 11 months from Kyler tearing his ACL.
That's
a good countdown.
Look at you bringing the info.
You know, math, it's my strong suit.
All right. There we go. Start the countdown clock in 3, 2, 1. After this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.